Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our weekly Q&A with Dr. Niki Davis. I'm Chandler Rosenberg with Plantbased Utah, joined by Dr. Niki Davis. Welcome, Dr. Davis.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you back. This week, we have had a few questions about the keto diet, such a hot topic right now. So I'm wondering, can you just tell us a little bit about what the keto diet is, how your body responds to it, etc.?
Absolutely. So this is a diet that you would think is one that has not been around for very long because it's very hip right now, the keto diet. But if you look back, actually, it's been in many forms over the decades. So, I mean, even if you look back to the Atkins diet, there was the paleo diet, and now we have the keto or ketogenic diet. But they're all kind of based on the same principle, which is low carbohydrate to put your body into ketosis. So I just kind of wanted to speak about ketosis and what that is exactly. Basically, what it is your body's normal response to low glucose. So if you are starving or if you're not eating enough glucose, your body responds by making ketones. And the reason it does this is for your brain. So your brain wants glucose in order to run, and it needs glucose to function correctly. And when it doesn't have that, it needs an alternative source of energy. And that alternative source can be ketones. So when your body's low on that glucose, it just starts using your fatty acids from your fat cells to make those ketones. Now, the problem is, this is great for starvation, right? Because if you are out there starving, and back before we had access to food 24/7, we didn't eat all the time. And there were times when we did not get enough food and we needed to have this function. This is a biological function that we needed to have. So it is useful, definitely. We just don't find ourselves in that state as much anymore where your body needs to use that. So now people are trying to use it to their benefit to try to maybe lose weight. Now, it is something that we have found has been helpful in certain diseases, so such as people who have epilepsy. It is something that has been found to be beneficial for those people. But if you're talking about the general population, it's definitely not something that is recommended for a long-term sustainable diet. And the reason for this is there are actually a lot of reasons for this. So one of them is that a lot of people think, well, gosh, I'm going to lose all this weight. And yes, you do. But a lot of it is water weight initially, because ketones act somewhat like a diuretic. So you're going to lose a lot of water weight. The other thing is, so your body, because it loves glucose so much and needs it so much for energy, your body stores glucose in long chains called glycogen, and it stores that in your liver, almost about 3 pounds worth. So it's actually quite a bit of your body weight stored as glycogen. So your body has to go through all that glucose in your liver, 3 pounds worth, before it's even going to start making those ketones. So you're going to lose at least 3 pounds right off just by getting rid of that storage of glucose in your liver. So that's kind of some of the initial ways that you're going to lose weight initially. It's typically not a ton of fat. The other thing is, by eating this way, because you're eating low carb, you're going to eat more animal products like meat, which increases the amount of fat, the amount of cholesterol, the amount of saturated fat in your diet, the amount of protein, and it super decreases the amount of fiber in your diet. And fiber is so important. And so what happens is, when you're eating this way, you're going to get constipated because you're not eating enough fiber. You're going to be fatigued. You're just not going to feel well. And that's because of some of those extra things that you're taking in. And studies have even shown that people who eat a ketogenic diet tend to have their LDL, which is the bad cholesterol, increase, and their HDL, which is the good cholesterol, decrease. So not good things if you're wanting to stave off heart disease and things like that. Now, one of the things that I did want to mention is that, so if you're talking about carbohydrates and thinking about how those are stored. So we already talked about how we store glycogen, which is glucose basically stored in your liver. And the glucose comes from carbohydrates. So if you're eating a carbohydrate, it's just a long chain of sugars, including glucose. And so you break down the carbohydrate into the glucose that your body then uses for that energy. Your body does not want to try to store excess sugars or excess carbohydrates besides that glycogen. And so what it will do is it will take that and either store it as glycogen in the liver or burn it off as heat from your body. What it doesn't like to do is take any excess glucose and turn it into fat. Now, this is something that a lot of people worry about, is that if you're eating too much sugar, too much glucose, that you're going to just store that right as fat. But actually what we found is that your body has to take about 30% of the calories you consume to take fat and turn it into sugar. Or sorry, take sugar and turn it into fat. So if you're eating carbohydrates, that sugar, if you have excess sugar, your body does not want to turn it into fat because it takes 30% of those calories that you take in to do that. And that's very inefficient. Your body does not like to be inefficient. What's easier for the body is when you eat fat, it's extremely efficient to take that fat from your diet and put it onto your body as storage. It only takes 3%. So it's much more metabolically efficient for the fat that you eat to become fat that you then store on your body. Only 3% of those calories are used. So if you're looking at whether or not if you're afraid to eat carbohydrates because you're afraid that it's going to turn into fat, it's just not the case. Your body does not like to do that. So overall, I would say if you've been interested in the ketogenic diet because of weight loss and things like that, that it is not something that's sustainable. It's something that doesn't make you feel well. It can cause a whole host of problems: fatigue, nausea, constipation, and you're going to get some weight loss initially, but it's just not the right kind of weight loss. And from all the patients that I've talked to that have tried it, it's just not something sustainable. It's not something that you can do for years and years and be happy. So it's not something that I would recommend at all for people to try. Instead, eating a whole food plant-based diet rich with grains and starchy vegetables and fruits is a much better way to go about eating healthy.
What about, I've seen a trend of plant-based keto. I'm not quite sure what that looks like. I imagine it's also relatively unsafe given that you're restricting the carbohydrate intake.
Yeah, to me, it seems that would be so incredibly difficult to do because plant-based really, plants have carbohydrates. I mean, that's a lot of the plants. I mean, all plants have carbohydrates. So when you're trying to minimize that, really what you're doing is maybe you're trying to increase the types of plants that have more protein and less carbohydrate. But that's really, really difficult to do. And it's just going to put you in starvation mode. It's just not sustainable. So it's not something that I would recommend at all either.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. Davis. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. As always, leave us a comment if you would like to ask a question for next week, and we will see you then. Thank you.
Thanks, Chandler.